Hi, I'm Sarah Compton-Bishop. I'm Chair of the Board of NHS Highland. I'm doing a quick video today to talk to you about our most recent board meeting. So that took place on Tuesday the 30th of September. All of the papers and a recording of the meeting are available on our website, but what I wanted to do today was just draw out a few highlights that I think are really important. So we did our sort of usual bits. There are some sort of bits of governance that we do every single time that we meet. So we take assurance reports from all of our governance committees that sit below the board. We also hear from our committees in the integration space, so the Highland Health and Social Care Committee and the Integration Joint Board in Argyll and Bute. So we did all of that, and that was really helpful. And we also did our usual, we take a finance report at every board meeting. No surprise there, probably. We have a very challenging financial position, so we had a robust conversation about that, about the risks that sit around financial delivery, but also about the huge amount of work that's going into mitigating those risks. So that was good. We had an update from Fiona, our chief executive. So we get an update from Fiona every time that we meet, and she highlights work that she's done and things that she's seen. So what I wanted to talk about, I suppose, was visits. We cover an enormous patch in NHS Highland. So Caithness right up in the north, all the way out to Skye in the west, all the way down to Campbelltown, the Kintyre Peninsula, and all the islands in Argyll and Bute. So massive, massive area. And as those of us who live in the area will know, the travelling about the patch gets a little bit harder as we come into the winter months. I don't need to tell people who live here how hard it can be, but I suppose what's good to know is that Fiona and the executive team, as well as myself and the non-execs, continue to put effort into visiting, getting out and about, seeing the services on the ground, speaking to communities, hearing from patients. And that's really, really valuable and rich intelligence. And Fiona's report really focused on that this meeting. She was talking particularly about teams that she's visited in the communities, care at home teams, care homes, health centres, all around our patch. And that was really, really good. What came through as a common theme is recognising the challenges, the significant challenges that a lot of our teams experience, but also recognising the way that they respond to that challenge. So some brilliant innovations, different ways of working, using our resource differently. Absolutely fantastic work within the teams, dedication, compassion, enthusiasm. And it's really, really nice to hear those stories at board. It brings a lot of the work to life. So that was a really helpful update. We also took a report on our refreshed tobacco strategy. So this is a strategy that comes around on a cyclical basis. What was great this time was that we broadened that out a bit. So it's an important topic for us to talk about. So tobacco use remains the leading preventable cause of death in Scotland. So it is not insignificant, and we have to talk about that. And we broadened the conversation out as well. So we broadened it out to talk about the risks around vaping and behaviour changes that we're seeing around that. We also looked at a lot of the data in the report through an inequalities lens, and that was quite stark. So we know that inequalities exist within our communities, and we know that inequalities impact people's health and their outcomes. And looking at the tobacco strategy and tobacco use through that inequalities lens really laid that out for us. So we had a good discussion about what inequalities our communities experience and how that then translates into behaviours, health outcomes, and the things that people live with. And carrying on that theme, we then also took updates on our child poverty action plans. So we do that in partnership with local authorities and more broadly. So we have an action plan for the Highland Council area and an action plan for Argyll and Bute. So we looked at both of those. And again, we know just how significant poverty is in terms of how it impacts people's lives, of course, but how it translates into health outcomes, life expectancy, and so forth. So we had a good discussion about the role that we play in tackling child poverty in partnership with others in the area. We took a report as well on winter and surge planning. So it used to just be called winter planning, but we added in the surge bit. And that is in recognition of the fact that we experience pressures all year round. Different pressures that can change with seasonality, but definitely pressures all year round. So the winter preparedness part of it is something that we have to do annually, and we have a really helpful framework from the Scottish Government that we work within. But we broadened the paper out to talk about surge planning more generally. With regards to the winter portion of it, that really highlighted the seasonal differences that we know that we're coming into, and those of you who've been a bit battered by the recent storms will appreciate that. And that planning, both the surge and the winter planning, spans the whole of our system. So it's GPs and our community teams that are right at the front of primary care on the ground, all the way through to our emergency teams and our urgent bits of the system, right into integrated care, care homes, care at home teams. So all throughout the system, teams will have these preparedness plans. So we had a good discussion about that. And I suppose just off the back of that, want to recognise the role that individuals and communities can play in that winter preparedness. And it never hurts to think about how ready we are as individuals. Again, with the recent storms, this will be fresh in our minds for those of us who lost power for a few days or encountered other difficulties. And there are things that the classics, but they remain true. But there are things that we can do as individuals and in our neighbourhoods to make sure that we are as ready for the challenges of winter as we can be, keeping up to date with vaccines, keeping up to date with prescriptions, making sure we're prepped, we're stocked up, we're ready, and checking in on one another and caring for those in our community. I think those are really important bits of being ready for the challenges that we might face when the weather changes. So those are a few highlights. As I said, you can go back and watch the recording of the meeting or bits of it as you so desire. And I will be back in a couple of months with another update. Thanks.